welcome back to another episode of The Jump. A lot of sports to get to, a lot to talk about tonight. The Masters has happened, and NBA playoffs are here. And since the last episode, we have hired a new coach at the University of Kentucky, which is my favorite team. And I usually don't make these YouTube videos or these podcasts about my team specifically. I usually talk about like the whole sports as a whole, really. So this one will have a lot of Kentucky basketball. So you can skip around if you're not into Kentucky basketball, or you can listen if you're interested. But first of all, I'm going to talk about the Mark Pope hiring. It's been almost a week. As I'm recording this, it's been 6 days. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't extremely shocked. And I think that's how the fan base was at first. I definitely wasn't alone in it. And the things that were tweeted out that night, we'll just say there was a lot of deleted tweets. I voiced my frustration in a video that I later deleted. I voiced my frustration in group chats, all of this. I was actually at a banquet when it happened, and it was shock from all of us. I got on Matt Jones' Twitter space that night, and frustrated fans there as well. So I think that Thursday night, it was a huge, huge shock. But then, by Friday morning, I think by the time I went to bed Thursday night, I was happy. I was like, you know what? I'm getting around to it. And then once I'd heard all these coaching things that happened, which I will later get to, I think that kind of changed everything for me. So with those coaching changes, it's not confirmed by me, but it's confirmed by people that I know that know people that would know. So I'm just under the assumption that that's how it was. But it was definitely shocking at first. So one thing that he will bring definitely is great and unique offense. So this is something that me and Cameron Mills later on in the interview refer to, and it's something called the zoom action, which people have gotten familiar with, the floppy action. It's the zoom action. It is set up, essentially, this is going to be the most basic level that I can explain it. A man at the top of the key, a man on the wing, and a man in the corner. The man on the wing has the ball. He passes it up to the man at the top of the key. The guy from the wing goes and sets it down screen to the guy on the corner, and then the guy on the corner is running off of that screen for a dribble handoff from the guy at the top of the key with the ball now. And it's going to be a handoff there, and you can do numerous things out of it. You can do numerous things out of just setting it up like that. There's a million different options that you can do. And teams like the Golden State Warriors have completely revolutionized basketball by doing this and changing everything that you do by it and going based off what the defense will give you. And that's essentially what Mark Pope has brought to the game of basketball. And a big name assistant that he has helped him with it that I'll refer to later on. But I think that's super exciting. It's going to be a unique offense. I love John Calipari with all my heart. But we did have a unique offense. We did not have a unique offense or defense. It was just man-to-man defensively, dribble drive, beat your man 1v1 offensively. So I think it's going to be awesome to be able to get just unique and actual creative play calling. And Mark Pope referred to it in his radio show that there's going to be tons of changes defensively. There's going to be punches thrown is what he referred to out of timeouts and different stuff, because analytically that is proven to drive turnovers and make teams more turnover prone, which I think is awesome. So initially, that Friday morning, $4 million in NIL money was guaranteed by donors and just people through the program. And I think that is amazing, because it came out, I think, 2 weeks ago, that Kansas had spent the most in NIL money, which was $4 million last year. And Arkansas has guaranteed Cal, I think, $4 to $5 million. So us getting $4 million initially was a huge deal, because I think that's going to help in recruiting big time right off the bat for Coach Pope. My assumption on last Thursday night, what had happened, and even some into Friday, was that Mitch Barnhart saw that Duke and North Carolina did this thing where they wrote it out and they hired one of their own, and it worked. And as of right now, it's worked for Hubert Davis and John Shire. And I'm assuming that was a little bit of what he had seen and why he would hire. And I think that's definitely an interesting way to look at it because, like, it's worked for them with guys that were unproven and hadn't coached yet. This guy has proven that he can win at a very high level. He hasn't won in March, but he's won everywhere he's been. I mean, Utah Valley, BYU, he's been a winner at both places. And then he was a really good assistant coach under other programs before that. So I'm excited for it. And one side note that people have noted a million times, Jeff Shepherd and Mark Pope were roommates in college. Jeff Shepherd's got a pretty good son when it comes to the game of basketball. And I bring it up with Cameron later, so I will let you all wait till the interview. But from what I think there's no way Reed Shepherd comes back. But I think if it was to happen with anybody, it would be Mark Pope as the head coach. So I think that's a one thing to note. The Rick Pitino video that he had done Friday morning, I guess, that video I think changed a lot of fans' minds. So he basically said that, like, Dan Hurley, Jay Wright, all these guys had been through some tough struggles, been through adversity, and then they got to where they are. And he guarantees that Mark Pope will do that as well. And he's just super excited, all this stuff. So I think that was awesome. And then later on that day, he said if Mark Pope in the UK need any help with NIL money, he will send it. So I thought that was awesome out of Rick. Obviously, he's been away from Kentucky for a while, but he's voiced it that he would definitely come back, and it's his biggest regret is leaving Kentucky. So I'm here to welcome Rick back if he wants to come to games or anything. I'd be all in for it. So the press conference that I referred to a little bit earlier, the crowd was unreal. Nobody in their right mind thought that was going to happen. And even the University of Kentucky didn't think it was going to happen because they had the upper sections blocked off, tarped off like they do for smaller concerts. They had ended up taking that down very quick because people started lining up at 8 a.m. on Sunday for a 4:30 press conference. It was a sold-out crowd, over 20,000 people in there. I don't know the exact numbers because the lower arena was shut off. They had the bleachers pulled in. But the lower section and the upper section, not a seat left. The entrance, I bring it up with Cameron Mills. The entrance was the greatest entrance possible. In 1996, Mark Pope played for the University of Kentucky, and they won a national championship, and he was the last person off the bus after all of his teammates holding the trophy up, and that's exactly what they did. They ran it back, brought the 96 team out, and managers and players before. They brought them all out, and then he was the last one off the bus with the trophy. It was phenomenal. The speech, I thought he said everything that he should have said. If you haven't seen it, go check that out because he definitely did the talking. And I think that's obviously it's a big part of coaching. You've got to be able to have the talk to go along with coaching. And I mean, John Calipari had that as good as anybody ever. And Mark Pope has that. And Cameron Mills refers to that as from Rick Pitino, the way that he's able to talk and I mean, motivate people the way that he is. So I think that's interesting. Travis Perry was there in attendance in a Kentucky shirt, so I think we're good. No worries of him entering the transfer portal. So that was an interesting thing because he name dropped Travis Perry and had Travis stand up in front of that crowd and wave to everybody. So I figured that was an insane moment for Travis Perry. Never thought he would have that. And I guess if there was, I mean, I didn't think he was going to transfer. I thought maybe initially right when John Calipari left, the freak out in him or something would transfer, but I think he's here to stay. Reed Shepherd was brought up on accident in that because Mark Pope referred to being shepherds of the young men on the basketball team. And as soon as he said shepherds, the crowd went nuts. So I don't know whether he meant to do that or not, but that was definitely one little hint. And he said that he's praying every day that God calls Reed back to Kentucky. There was a few, I guess you could say, shots at Calipari, and whether they were purposeful or not. I don't know if I don't think he would mean to do it, but the biggest shot that he took was, we're going to win championships in Nashville. That might sound stupid to non-Kentucky fans, but that's been an issue as of recently because it's felt like John Calipari hasn't cared about the SEC tournament, where he's lost the game and he's like, all right, I'm going to go home and hang out with my dogs. Or he's going to go and get some sleep, and he wouldn't even do a press conference or something after it. It's been an issue, and the fans show out every single year. So I thought that was awesome that he had said that. And then, I mean, switching up defenses. The best quote ever, I bring it up later in the interview, the best quote maybe ever was that he's going to make sure that these players know that they're not doing these jerseys a favor by letting them clothe them. And that was, I don't know if it's a shot at Cal, but it's basically like these guys are going to know what it means to put on that jersey. So I thought that was awesome. And but I just feel like he nailed that speech. Like he said, it was like somebody had a checklist, and he checked off every single box. So to get into the head coaching like job path, this was what my assumption was. There was like, this is a combined like knowledge of multiple people telling me this. So there was a tier 1 of people that they called that they didn't think there was even a chance that they would entertain the job. And there was like a list of those guys where like if they entertained that job, they were in the actual coaching search with another group of people. Brad Stevens from the Celtics, he said, or his agent, I guess it would have been, said no, we'll definitely be playing basketball later into the summer. Frank Vogel, no, same exact thing. Jay Wright, just no. Not at all. He's enjoying being in media. And then it gets to another tier of people where it's Nate Oates, Scott Drew, Dan Hurley, Billy Donovan. Nate Oates, I mean, it's been known that Mitch Barnhart's not a huge fan of him, the way that he dealt with the Brandon Miller situation and his personality. It's just not... I think it was tough enough for Mitch to deal with John Calipari, and Nate Oates is somewhat attitude-wise the same type of guy. So it was just a no, we'll wait to call Nate Oates unless we have to. Then it got to Scott Drew, which Mitch Barnhart has a great relationship with him. They've been friends for a while now. Mainly got close during the COVID tournament. Scott Drew said no. The family, I think they're building like a crazy mansion in Waco. And then I think he may also live with like his cousins, or they're very, very close, and they're very, very religious. So Scott Drew said he had prayed on it, and he felt like God called him to stay in Waco. Some people were speculating that he may have got scared because it was about a week ago now that he posted that he was at a restaurant with a Baylor donor while our coaching search was happening, and there was a Kentucky fan that called the restaurant and called like the owner or whatever and said, tell Scott he needs to come to Kentucky. And they gave the phone to Scott Drew, and he said that to him, and he may have got a little freaked out by that. I'm not sure. And then there was rumors that Scott Drew had asked another SEC coach, when I'm assuming it was John Calipari, if the kids would be safe going to school the next day after a loss, which I thought was crazy. Like, Kentucky fans aren't that insane. But yeah, that was how that one went. He prayed on it, and God had told him that it wasn't the place. You can't argue with it. I mean, he's a very religious man. So I think that was how that one went. And then Dan Hurley. So there's been like weird things because he never said no until the final like actual, no, I'm not leaving UConn. And then after that, he claimed to have said like, I don't know whether it's to make UConn fans happy or if it's that like he actually felt this way. But he said there was no chance he was ever leaving Kentucky. They could offer $20 million, but he was told to keep acting like he's not going to go, but not officially say no, so that he could get a little more money out of UConn. So that may have been how that one happened. Then Billy Donovan was the last one on this tier. And as of right now, Billy Donovan's Bulls are playing in the play-in tournament. It's halftime right now, so we would have had to wait until now for that at least. At the earliest, it would have been now, which is crazy. It's almost been a week since we hired. But I think that's exactly how those went. Then it got to a tier of, I guess a tier 2, where it was Bruce Pearl, Chris Beard, Sean Miller. Bruce Pearl, NCAA violations. Chris Beard, legal issues, domestic abuse within the last 2 years. And then Sean Miller, NCAA issues. So they decided not to call any of them. They get to that third tier, and it's people like Will Wade, Tommy Lloyd, Brad Underwood, Shaka Smart, Mark Pope. And I personally, even at the time, even before any of this happened, I would have taken Mark Pope over any of those guys because he's one of our own. He went to Kentucky, he understands it. And all those other guys haven't done anything in March either. So that's how I think it went. Some people have speculated, even Cameron Mills says in the interview that Mark Pope was third the whole time. It was Scott Drew, Dan Hurley, one of those orders, and then it was Mark Pope right behind him. So I think it's interesting to see how it worked out. But either way, I'm fine with it after hearing how their mindsets were on it. So obviously that leads to Mark Pope being the new head coach. And then roster spots is the huge thing. So technically, the undecided players right now, as I'm filming this, Reed Sheppard and Jordan Burks haven't made a decision. If it's up to me, if it's me right now, I think Reed Sheppard's definitely gone, and I would imagine Jordan Burks is gone. But it's really interesting that he's still posting pictures in Kentucky, at the Joe Kraft Center, every single night, getting shots up. It feels like he is here to stay, and I would be fine with it. I think it'd be awesome for Jordan Burks to stay. So I would say 50-50 on him. I think Reed is definitely gone. And then the rest of the roster is Travis Perry and Colin Chandler. The interesting thing about Colin Chandler, for those of you that may not be Kentucky fans, he went on a 2-year mission trip. So he graduated in the class of 22, went on a 2-year mission trip for the Latter-day Saints, Mormon religion. He'd been gone for 2 years now. He was the Gatorade Player of the Year in Utah. He was the 33 overall recruit in his class. But he gets back May 2nd, and I think that is plenty of time. I think he'll be fine. I mean, I don't think it's any worry. He's either 20 or 21. I've heard people say different things. But so I think that's a huge advantage, him being so old already. So I think that's going to be awesome. And he was a guy that was committed to BYU, flipped his commitment, and he's wanting to play for Coach Pope at Kentucky. 5 out of the 6 freshmen that we had coming in have officially decommitted. So Billy Richmond was the last one, which I thought was weird because I thought Billy was gone immediately because he's a Cal guy. It's now come out that Trilly Donovan, which is a very, 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 very good source, he has said that Jerry Jones, the Cowboys owner, famous Arkansas fan, he is now said that he will pay double what these he will pay double in NIL money to all these recruits, that if they flip their commit from UK to Arkansas, he'll give them double the NIL money. So that's I don't know. I mean, that's sad, but I don't know. The thing that's interesting to me is that I think Carter Knox is definitely going. I think he's a lock to go to Arkansas. But other than that, I don't think there's a guarantee that any of them end up at Arkansas. Jaden Quaintance has already taken other visits. He's taken one to Louisville. I think Boogie Flan's weighing his options. I think all these guys are weighing their options. And I'm not just saying this in hindsight. I've said this numerous times, even while we were recruiting them. I don't think this class is super good, and that's not shocking. Numerous people have said that, but I mean, I was really only a fan of I thought having JQ for 2 years was awesome, so I was a fan of that. But other than that, the Boogie Flan, and other than that, in that class, I wasn't a huge fan. Sompto, Carter Knox, Billy Richmond. I mean, it didn't really matter to me. I'm fine with losing them. But one interesting thing is we're still recruiting a freshman that Cal was recruiting while he was here, and now he's recruiting him at Arkansas. Liam McNeely played at Montverde. The rumors are, not even really rumors, Jack Pilgrim of KSR has said multiple times now that he wants to play for a blue blood. He was committed to Indiana for a while, tried to get Boogie Flan to go to Indiana with him, and he decommitted around a month and a half ago probably. And it's a really interesting race because Kansas, they've got a ton of guys coming in, but they're still in the race for him. And UConn is the main team that you're going to have to steal him from because he wants to play for a blue blood, and they've obviously had the recent success. So I think it'll be a tough pull from them. But as I'm filming this, Mark Pope just finished up with a Zoom call with Liam McNeely. So I think that's a really interesting piece to it. I would love to have him. I think he would fit in this system great, and obviously he's an amazing player. He was a McDonald's All-American, top. I don't want to I think top 15. I don't know if he was top 10, but I mean he was winning MVPs in tournaments over Cooper Flagg, who was the number one player consensus. So it's obvious that he can play ball. So I would love to have him. Other than that, it's obviously going to be filled with transfers. So Jeremy Roach is the name that is came out. As you all are watching this, this one came out Tuesday night at like 10 or 11. That Jeremy Roach was entering the transfer portal while entering his name in the draft and weighing his options. He almost committed to Kentucky out of high school. He played the last 4 years at Duke. I would love to have him if he wants to come to Lexington. But it's an interesting Final Three that he has because he's got St. John's, Arkansas, and Kentucky. So it's the most dramatic three that you could imagine. But I think it'd be awesome to get him as well. And there was also rumors probably a day ago that Jay Lucas, a very, very well-known assistant coach, an up-and-coming recruiter, an elite recruiter, an amazing assistant coach, he left Kentucky a few years ago to go to Duke. And there's rumors that he may come back and bring Jeremy Roach and Mark Mitchell with him, which I think would be crazy. I mean, I don't know how Mark Mitchell would fit in this system, but we'll take him. But Jeremy Roach would be a huge get. He's obviously played a lot of high-level basketball. And there's a little bit of sadness because he was the last player in college basketball that had played for Coach K. So he's now hanging up that. Another name is Jackson Robinson. He was at BYU. Their best player by far in my eyes. I thought he was, like, some people say Dallin Hall, some people say Ali Khalifa. I think it was Jackson Robinson the whole year. He's impressive, but some people are saying that he's a Kentucky lock. He's just seeing what the NBA GMs have to say, just from whenever he kind of tests the waters a little bit. So I'm interested in seeing how that one goes. And then we have, out of Dayton, the best three-point shooter in the country last year, a coin flip three-point shooter, 50%, Kobe Brea. That's who. These are names that we've reached out to, confirmed. So Jeremy Roach, Jackson Robinson added to this. Kobe Brea from Dayton. Otega Owe, I think that's how it's pronounced. I don't know this guy. He's from Oklahoma, a defensive guard that would help a lot on that side. Andrej Stojakovic from Stanford, another McDonald's All-American. Many of you will know Peja Stojakovic that played in the NBA, former NBA All-Star. I think he would be a huge get. He didn't have a great freshman year, but you don't get graded a 5-star just for having the last name of somebody. I think he could be really good in this system as well. Amari Williams, a big man out of Drexel, which I think defensively, I think that's why we're trying to get him early. I think defensively he's one of the best guys in the portal. I think he's like 6'11". So that would be a big get. Ali Khalifa, who I referred to a minute ago from BYU, big man, 5. He played 5 for him last year, and he could shoot the ball really well. Phenomenal passer, a Jokic type. And then Javon Small from Oklahoma State, who can shoot the ball. He's great with the ball or without the ball. So I think that would be an awesome one to get as well. He still needs to fill out his staff, so that will definitely help with recruiting. But he hired his first staff member today. As I'm recording this, Cody Feger from BYU joins the staff at Kentucky, and apparently he had already been recruiting a little bit, but it just now got confirmed and announced. He's a basketball genius. I've looked into a lot of the stuff after he got announced. He's just a savant. He's a student of the game, and any type of compliment that you can give for him, it fits. He's a genius when it comes to the game. He also worked under Rick Majerus, so for those of you all that are into basketball, you'll know the name. But I think it's just it's an amazing hire. And apparently, too, people that are very, very respected in the basketball world have nothing but great things to say about Cody Feger. And I think he's kind of the next up-and-coming guy. And there's also YouTube videos that you can watch of him like breaking down film, and you can tell he just loves it. This guy just loves the game of basketball. So I think that's an amazing get, especially as the first hire on the staff. And there's also some like buzz about possibly Kenny Payne joining the staff, which obviously when this comes out, you all will know more than I know currently. But there's rumors of Kenny Payne maybe joining the staff again. Orlando Antigua is trying to join the staff. So we'll see how it goes. I think you're allowed 5 staff members now in college. So we'll see what happens there going forward. So I want to bring up a little John Calipari again because I think I did one video since the John Calipari move. So I want to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. First, I want to talk about the good because this man was my childhood. I mean, there's so many good things that you can say about this guy, but I'm going to sum them up into a few bullet points for each category. Tons of first-round draft picks. I mean, he's got the record for first-round draft picks, and I think if Reed, Reeves, and Rob all get drafted this year, it'll get him at 50 players selected in the draft while he's been at Kentucky, which is unreal. It's crazy what he's done. With that being said, he's also changed families' lives for generations. He's made generational wealth for these young men, the way he's developed them and turned them into NBA players. So I think that's an amazing thing. He revived the University of Kentucky. When he came to Kentucky, Kentucky was nowhere near what this program's history is. So I think when he took that job, it was a perfect match. So he did that for us. He's helped the Commonwealth, helped all of Kentucky through any adversity, whether it's been floods, tornadoes. He's been the first guy to step up and donate and have some fundraisers for them. All of that. He would do the children's camp. He'd go around the state. So all of that, just being able to impact communities and everything like that. I think that was awesome. He changed college basketball. He was really the first one to adopt the one-and-done type mindset, and it completely changed everything. Forever. It's still going to happen from now and forever. Obviously, it's died down a little bit, but he changed college basketball. And you really can't talk about, especially recent years of college basketball, without mentioning the name John Calipari. So that's obviously, there's a couple things. There's a million things that I can say about him that are great. So that's just a couple of them. The bad. Obviously, the last few years haven't been great. Last Final Four was 2015. He's got one tournament win. He had one tournament win at Kentucky and one SEC tournament win at Kentucky since 2019. First 3-game losing streak at Rupp Arena for the first time in history. A 15-seed loss and a 14-seed loss, and the worst season in school history. That's all since COVID. So that's the bad. And then the ugly are the relationships that ended up dying towards the end, post 2017, I guess. Joel Justice left. Jay Lucas left. TJ Beisner left. Kenny Payne left. John Robick left. John Welch left. Joel Justice went to Arizona State. Jay Lucas took the exact same position at Duke. TJ Beisner left for the same exact position at North Carolina. Kenny Payne, he went to the NBA. He went to the Knicks. I think that one's fine. John Robick left, which was his X's and O guy. I think he just retired. I don't even think he went somewhere to coach. I think he was just kind of tired of it. And then John Welch went to Fresno State. And even if Cal stayed at Kentucky, he wasn't going to be staying at Kentucky with him. So I think that was another thing. And also, it's little, but he wasn't holding up to his end of the margin on like the media aspect. So like he was almost unreachable. And then when he would do media, he would act like all of you all are dumb, and I'm the one that did all of this, and I won us this ball game. And it felt like it had shifted into being like the John Calipari University. Like it felt like it wasn't University of Kentucky, it was the University of John Calipari. So it began getting pretty bad. And it's sad that the lasting image and the one last image of John Calipari that this fan base will have is him walking his dog. At the same time that he was supposed to have a players' meeting, kind of saying goodbye, and he canceled it, and then he was spotted by the news walking his dog. It's sad that that's how it's going to go out, but yeah, and I think it's obvious he truly wanted to stay at Kentucky, but the fan base had gotten overwhelming, and but I don't know. I mean, his press conference at Arkansas was very, very weird. And I was watching it from a perspective of like, I hope he does well. I hope he thrives. I hope he does great things for Arkansas outside of when they play Kentucky. So I was watching it, wanting to be optimistic, wanting to see him do his talk and everything that he used to do for us that we used to love listening to. I was hoping he would do that, and all these Arkansas fans would eat it up. But no, that wasn't it by any means. He did not want to be there at all. He continued to say "we" when talking about Kentucky throughout the thing, throughout the whole press conference. He didn't lead Woo Pig Sooie when they tried to get him to do it. It was bad. Like there was like he just wasn't himself at all. Like we've seen him for 15 years. He was not himself by any means. It was crazy. I couldn't believe how like sad he looked, and even just getting off the plane, walking into Bud Walton in the post press conference like interviews, he just doesn't want to be there at all. It would not shock me. He signed a 5-year deal. It would not shock me if he retires after next year, or I mean even before the season. Like it's crazy. But like I said, my favorite coach of all time. I hope he does well. But Arkansas fans are kind of annoying already. But I hope he does well there. And I mean, that man like raised me. I mentioned it in the interview. I was 6 years old when he got hired. So yeah, it's wild. It was definitely a shocking, like crazy night when it happened. But I'm excited for this future, and that's what we talk about in the interview. So with that being said, here is the interview. We now welcome on a very, very special guest for reasons outside of basketball, but a Kentucky basketball legend. I mean, two-time national champion. I think it goes unsaid. Like from Kentucky fans, they obviously know who you are. And there's a picture that you might recognize up here. Cameron Mills, like I said, two-time national champion, and just a Kentucky legend from the state, and then played for the Cats for 4 years. So the elephant in the room, Mark Pope. It's been about a week now that he was named the head coach at the University of Kentucky. We talked a little bit about it. What were your initial like reactions, like when it broke? What you thought?
Honestly, I think partial disbelief. I don't know. It was hard to describe because that whole week was kind of such a blur where all these names kept coming up and then falling away and then coming up and falling away. And I've been telling people, excuse me, I'd been telling people, as had some of my teammates, that we thought, and then of course we're biased, but that we thought Mark would be a great, like of all of our former teammates that coach, Mark would be the perfect fit here for a lot of reasons. And then it wasn't until I guess last Thursday that his name started cropping up in some of the lists, and some of the people started reporting that. And even then, I think a lot of us were like, "Oh wow, all right, he's being considered." But I think at the same time, I'm not sure that Hurley had told us no, and I think Scott Drew had told us no. So I think it's like, okay, well, they're whittling down, and all of a sudden, I go to bed Thursday night and wake up Friday morning. I think I had like 700, 800 texts, and I think they were all just people that it had broke overnight. It was going to be I mean, it was actually happening. It seemed as what everything was indicating. So thoughts were just we were thrilled. I mean, we were all just thrilled because I think what we all knew, and when I say we, I mean kind of the guys that know Mark and played with him, we all knew the energy and the genuine energy and enthusiasm, positivity he was going to bring, plus his work ethic. And it's hard for me to imagine if you're just looking at the press conference, kind of was confirmation to me, but it's just hard to me imagine he won't succeed here. Um, he's too smart. He knows the game too well. It was real. It was excitement personally, Cameron, and then it was excitement. I think professionally for UK and for UK as a whole. I think it's exciting just because I really do think he'll be another great coach here.
From my perspective, just from a fan standpoint, it felt like, which I think why a lot of the fan base was like shocked initially, and like
Right,
some people were obviously upset and vocally upset on like social media, but
right,
it felt like the whole thing went super fast. Like whenever, because it was like I've heard like 30 different like people report that it was like Hurley number one or Scott Drew number one, but like those two were the top two. And
yeah,
then it felt like once Hurley turned it down, I think a lot of people were just so worried with how fast the process went.
yeah.
Just
I think two things about that. Number one, I think in Barnhart's mind, he wanted if he was going to go, if the next person on that list was Billy Donovan, which is I guess what was rumored that it was. Well, who knows? And I don't even know at this point, to be honest, if because Billy had a game on Monday, right? And if he won, they were in the playoffs. I don't think Barnhart wanted to wait until Monday, or whenever that game was. I think he was like, okay, my one and my two have said no. Fair enough. He kind of got down on his list, and I'm imagining all this that it was Billy, but I got to wait till Monday to even really know something about Billy, unless they've been talking behind the scenes. I think that's kind of what surprised a lot of those of us who know Mark too, is that he so many people said no, and then Mark was like, well, yes. I mean, it's not even a no-brainer. But I think because of the speed, I think that should tell a lot of people um how impressive Mark is to meet with. And I make all this up. I don't know that. I mean, he and Barnhart didn't know each other prior. That may be the case. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. And not that I've even heard that it's true. But I think um, I'm assuming what happened, knowing Mark and his personality, that he was on the list. Barnhart was considering him. He thought he talked to him. He talked to him, and then all of a sudden, Barnhart was like hearing everything he wanted to hear as far as what a head coach of Kentucky needs to be able to handle, needs to be able to do, and what the expectations are. So I think that's why it happened so quick. Is Barnhart was like, okay, he's on my list. I'm gonna talk to him. He talks to him, and it's like, oh my gosh, I found my guy. Because I think that's just Mark's personality. He can turn you around that quick.
yeah, that the play-in game that you were referring to is actually tonight, so it wouldn't
Oh,
have
is
been
it
till
tonight?
tonight
So there
for
would have been, yeah, it would have had to
yeah.
been till Wednesday, and then, yeah, I mean, and we had already lost a week because of the way we thought we had a coach in Cal, and then a week after the season's over, basically Cal's gone, and then Barnhart's got to scramble and put together find a coach, and then that coach is now basically 2 weeks behind,
Yeah.
as far as like getting started on next season. So.
Do you know like anything about like it was just an assumption that like Billy Donovan, if people were to ask him, like he wouldn't be able to talk about it really. Is there like anything like
As far as do I know anything about like whether or not he Barnhart did talk to him?
yeah, or like even if that's like a possibility, like if Billy can even like
I don't know how it
entertain the
works.
thought.
Yeah, it's I'm not sure how it works as far as like college to NBA, college to college. I think there are some things written into contracts, and that may be what it all boils down to, whether it's college to NBA or college to college coaches, whatever's written into their contract. So, if in Billy's contract with the Bulls, if it's you can't talk to anyone about another job unless you tell us first, which I think was in Cal's contract with us. Um, but yeah, I think I don't know if that would have happened, but even if let's say they had been talking behind the scenes, number one, Coach Donovan is going to be. I mean, he is not that you can't focus on one thing at a time, but he's got a huge game coming up that he wants to win. So he's not going to want to be distracted with any of this. When coaches talk about distractions, it's real. Distractions are big deals. Whether it's from a coach is distracted or a team is distracted. So I don't know how much Billy would have talked. It probably would have been Barnhart and his agent. But then we wouldn't have even gotten close to getting answers for the most part, because nothing, even with confidentiality stuff, leaks get out all the time. So if Billy had said, yeah, you know what, they've got pre-negotiated terms, and if I lose on Wednesday, yeah, I'm ready to get out. It all could have happened. I don't know how far he and Barnhart got into talking. But it's kind of like I wouldn't have minded Billy Donovan being the next head coach here, but I couldn't be happier with how it worked out, because I think a lot of people, I think we just didn't know if Mark would ever get a chance to coach a program this big, and for it to be our team, our program, that just makes it super special, because I think all of his teammates, we know he's going to succeed. We just know he is, because that's just who Mark is.
So like the thing that kind of broke the internet, especially in the college basketball world, was the entrance alone that you all had. So first question, how many people were able to fit on that bus? Because it felt like there was a
Oh,
million people on that bus.
yeah, it did actually, because I don't know. I was actually even in the back county at one point. And I'm trying to think. I, I think we counted. I think Winston Bennett and I were on the very back of the bus, and we were kind of trying to figure it out. I think we figured out there was probably about 70 or 80 people on that bus, because it did seem to go on. It seemed to take forever for it, because we had 4 rows of seats. All of them were taken, and then we had people standing up in the lane to
Crazy.
but I thought that was cool. It's such a cool idea by Kentucky, not only to do it that way, but then we had to convince Mark on the back of the bus, like, no, you got to get off with the trophy. That's your trophy. It's exactly how you got off in '96 when we drove into Rupp Arena in a similar bus.
So did you expect kind of like that type of turnout? Because it felt like
No,
there
mm-mm.
was.
No,
I heard that
we
UK expected like 8 to 12,000,
yeah, I
but
think so. Which even that I thought maybe was aspirational, but so many people turned out. We didn't know. We were getting ready to pull in to Rupp on that bus, and they had told us that there were 15,000 people out there, which to me means, almost the entire lower arena. Because I think I want to say there's about 10, it's either 10,000 seats down there, something like that. Anyway, so I thought, okay, and then maybe some scatterings up above and top, and then we pulled in, and the whole place was packed. So, and then I heard there was another 5,000 outside wanting to get in, and it's interesting to me, like how many people it seemed were vocally negative about the hire on Friday, and then within 2 days, presumably after people took some time to think about it, do some research, figure out where Mark's been, what kind of coach he was, maybe watch some interviews, because again, to watch him talk and to hear him pontificate, it can be pretty impressive. But then on Sunday, 20,000 people show up, turning away 5,000, and I love the little memes that have gone around where Calipari's press conference at Arkansas, and how it was like just a bunch of reporters, and then Pope's press conference at UK, which it surprised me when they even did the press conference part. It was like it turned into a rally, and then all of a sudden they were going to do a press conference, and I thought, we're going to be here a while.
it was actually funny. I'd seen where somebody compared like the two press conferences in the crowd from
Yeah,
Calipari's to Pope's, and then
right.
an Arkansas fan had the nerve to say like, "What else is there to do in Kentucky?" And
Yeah, no,
I've never been to Arkansas, but I
I
was like,
saw the
"What?"
same thing. Yeah, yeah. I'll be in Arkansas next week, as a matter of fact, and it's about like it is here. Maybe I mean, they don't have any pro teams there either, so that's always the joke, is that there's no pro teams in Kentucky. So what else is there to do? But yeah, I don't think there are any pro teams in Arkansas, unless I'm just blanking on one. So, but there were a lot of I think excited Arkansas fans, which they should be excited. I mean, he's definitely gonna, he's gonna bring in Coach Cal's gonna bring in energy to Arkansas. He's gonna bring a lot of talent, I think, to Arkansas. And I do think that we're definitely going to be on the list of, his main goals to beat us every year, kind of like the way Patino was when he was at Louisville for Cal. I mean, it's just that natural rivalry. So that'll be fun, when we do play Arkansas next few years. But either way, he made his decision, went to Arkansas. We had a coaching vacancy here, and it just, to me, it turned out absolutely perfect who got offered the job and who took it.
Do you think he like you think Cal felt some type of way like once he saw the turnout of
Mm,
folks?
I mean, he might have. I don't think it's ever something he'd admit. As a matter of fact, I think he did tweet something um, very respectful out about it. I feel like he tweeted a picture of the press conference that said something about, a very positive thing. At least that's how I remember it. I've intentionally not been on Twitter or a lot of social media the last few days, just because that's almost all I was doing last week. But I don't know I'm sure he felt disappointed, but I think that's why he left. I think he left because, um, it is a meat grinder to be the head coach here. It is hard. And of course, I don't say that from experience personally, but watching my coaches go through it, watching coaches go through it, it's just the expectation is, Final Four championship, at least Final Four every year kind of deal. Um, so I think we had just he'd been here longer than any coach other than Rupp. So I think, I mean, literally time wise, it goes Rupp's 42 years, Cal's 15 years. No one else has been here longer than that. So I think a lot of I think a lot of it was like he said in his goodbye video, which is it's run our time. We've run our time there in Lexington. He was very respectful, and now there's needs to be a new voice in Lexington. And again, not to be repetitive, Cameron, but it's like I just can't imagine a better voice that Kentucky fans needed. They needed his energy. They needed his knowledge, and they needed to know that his expectation was, and I'm talking about Mark Pope here, his expectation for himself and for his Kentucky team was national championship and putting banners up in the rafters.
So you referred to it a lot that like he's obviously a great speaker and great. I mean, he's a proven coach already. Obviously, like people have highlighted that like he hasn't won a tournament game, but it's proven in the regular season that he can win games with his style. Off of that, and he talked about it a little bit at the press conference. What type of guy is he like off the court, like as a teammate to you, or how is he just like in the press conference where he said he loves his family, loves God, loves this university, loves this sport.
Yeah.
What's a thing that you would like highlight from him?
I think more than anything, everything everyone saw at the press conference the other day, it's all genuine. None of it's like manufactured. None of that's, I got to get the UK fan base behind me, so I'm going to be something I'm not, or I'm going to act in a way that I don't. Like everything he did, from the CATS thing to the jokes. I mean, he's just it was all genuine. There wasn't anything out there that was planned. He had written a speech, to make sure he got certain points across, and even then he pauses in that moment and make sure that how embarrassed. I think it may have come from a question from a reporter, but he pauses is so embarrassed that he hadn't thanked Coach Pitino yet, and that was all authentic. He probably did just blanked, mentioning him in his speech, and then all of a sudden somebody asked him or something came up, and he's just kind of caught himself. Oh, I mean, it's so embarrassing that I wouldn't mention him, because everything he said was genuine, whether it was about Coach Pitino or being a UK former player or what the expectations are here, or who he is as a person as he talked. I loved how he had each of his daughters basically stand up, on their own, his wife stand up and say hello. And I mean, he's just that genuine. What everybody saw at the press conference, that is who he is. So there wasn't anything that was revealed to anybody or that will ever need to be, as far as like, well, he's holding back, or this is his persona in public, this is his persona in private. That's just Mark. Mark is just who everybody saw on Sunday.
I had seen some people talk about it on Twitter and on some podcasts I listened to, like the difference between like the obviously John Calipari, which I love him, but like the way that he would talk in like in a press conference, like he's a great salesman and he could like
Uh-huh.
get you like bought into anything. And then so some people were saying there's like two worlds where you're like a salesman or you're extremely real, and people were saying that's what they thought like Mark Pope was, like just
Yeah,
extremely
I
real.
mean, and look, I think a lot of Cal's enthusiasm was authentic as well. But I do think sometimes, like we get into like when we lost that 3 or 4 games at home, in December or something this year or whenever it was, there was he started kind of the maybe the pressure, all the fans, the unhappiness, the unruliness was. I'm sure it gets to you as a head coach, but then we go out and I think Auburn was the next big game, and we crushed Auburn. At least led them, from wire to wire. And in the post game press conference, I think it was after the Auburn game, Coach Cal was kind of crowing. Just because he had pulled it together. The team got together and played a great game. But I think he was kind of, to me, and this is again, I think who Mark is going to be because it's who he was as a kid when we played together. Everything is going to be humility. You're going to see a lot of it's all going to be genuine, but it's going to be a lot of, it's not me, it's we. I mean, how many times press conference did he say this is our program, talking to himself, his former teammates, all the ex-players, the boosters, the fans, this is our program, not my program. And again, that's authentic. That is truly how he feels about that kind of stuff. So he's just he really is like I said, of all my ex-teammates, and I love them all. But I think we all knew like Mark was the smartest, Mark was the most driven, Mark was the most focused of all of us. And that was when he was playing. I mean, he is a Rhodes Scholar candidate, as Mitch Barnhart reminded everybody on Sunday, that he's never hired one before. Well, he just has. I mean, Mark is a brilliant person. But all of it, no matter who he is, it just comes across as real genuine, or it is real genuine because who y'all saw at the podium on Sunday, that's just who we saw all the time, and who we saw even as some of us hadn't seen him in a few years. Before the press conference, that's who he was. He came in the back of the bus, and he hung out with us and said hello to everybody and thank you to everybody. And again, you're talking about those 80 people on that bus. That's just who he is.
So I think another thing that will certainly help him out initially in recruiting was like donors like getting back in when initially
Yeah.
Friday, like people had talked about, which it had came out recently that Kansas had like the most money in NIL in the past season, which was 4 million, and
Didn't
then it
help
was
him
4
much.
million up front.
Yeah.
So,
4 million
what
up
do you
front.
think? Like, just I'd heard there was like 4 or 5 donors that had kind of
Oh, I see.
drifted
They gave
away
him to him
from,
before the season started.
and then it was like an estimated 4 to 5 million in NIL, which could help. I mean, obviously, it's going to be a lot easier in a sense to like recruit at Kentucky than it was at BYU with all the like different things. But I think
Yeah,
that
yeah, it always would have
NIL
been.
money.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's like, and another thing that was the thing that people had brought up about Cal. It was like 4 million, whatever over there. I think it's just impressive that like that many donors bought in by like Friday morning, because all of that had came out at like noon on Friday. So
Right.
it was interesting just to see like how many donors had bought back in that had
Well,
gotten
I
away
mean,
from the
and
program.
again, even the doubt that a lot of people had, or the shots that people took at us that, well, this is the state of Kentucky basketball. This is who they hired, which I think a lot of even UK fans felt that way. Is that okay? We went from a two-time national champion in Danny Hurley, then assuming he was our first stop, and then we went to Scott Drew, who's won one national championship, to Mark Pope, who has coached at Utah Valley and BYU basically. Um, I think it's fair that a lot of fans said they weren't happy about the hire initially. Um, because they didn't know much about him, because he wasn't on anyone's radar. He should have been, but he wasn't. And then again, the donors would have been the same way. I'm not saying all of them. I'm saying a lot of them would have been, really, this is what we fall into. And I think there's a lesson there that's always what, if that's your perception that we fell, which I don't think it is much anymore for a lot of people, because again, Mark's personality and how he can kind of get you on board so fast. But I think there were a lot of people that fairly just doubted, whether or not they think we had fallen. But I think the press conference and Coach Pitino's video that he made, and I think the people who knew Mark knew this was going to happen, or knew this could happen. And I think a lot of people, even fans who were here when he played, as much as we talk about, well, when they're here 4 years, we get to know them better. You don't ever really get to know these guys for the most part. And I think that was what's cool, is now people are going to get to know Mark, because they are going to hear from him every day, as he said in the press conference. They're going to be, it's just going to be a much different vibe here, because Pope's here as opposed to Calipari. Not right or wrong, just a different vibe.
I watched I don't know if it was like call or something that you all did with you and Jeff, and I think it was like Tony Delk, and
Yeah.
where you all had brought up something that Mark Pope had referenced in his press conference, the throw up in the practice jersey. Is there any other stories that like
Uh,
you would like feel
well,
that you could
yeah,
share?
yeah, there are probably thousands of them. And I think, and I'll give you a different one just again to speak to um how intelligent he is. Like when we would get done with practice, everybody was sore, everybody was tired. And, Mark, again, because of who he is, he was the hardest working player in practice all the time. So we get done with the 3 hour practice, everybody be tired and just want to veg out. And all right, let's go watch a movie in so-and-so's room. Let's go watch TV or let's go hang out with a girlfriend or something. But we would walk in and there would be Mark always after, training table, which was after practice. So when we had our free time, or could have had a free time depending on our tutor and study hall schedule, but we'd walk in down in the dorms at Wildcat Lodge, and there would be Mark in his room reading a classical novel for like the third time. I always refer to as Dante's Inferno because I know it was Dante's Inferno for a long time. Or for there was a week there where like he was seemingly reading it every day. But that's just kind of who he is. I mean, he's just, it's just one of those things where 1,000 stories I could tell you. And the fun thing is, Cameron, is that 1,000 stories, I mean, they'll come out like all the jokes, like, the more he's around former teammates, even from talking to his wife and his daughters the other day at the press conference, they were telling us stories that Mark had told them about his time at UK. So I think all the stories that you're asking for, or that, another story, I think that's what's going to be fun over the next few years is everybody is going to learn. Everybody's going to hear a lot of these stories. So the vomit in the shirt, that's absolutely true story. That was just ridiculous. But everybody's going to have their stories about his time here. And the cool thing is he's going to make a lot of stories from now on from his time here. So that's going to be fun too.
So I have some friends that are this is like the first real like flip of like a coach for me, because I was 6 years old when
Yeah.
John
Oh, yeah.
Calipari got to
I got it.
Kentucky. So my friends and like my dad is luckily, he's like grown my knowledge to where like I know it's more than just Cal. Like it was obviously there
Right.
was Kentucky way before John Calipari. There'll be Kentucky
Right.
after. But my friends have grown accustomed to like getting these 5 stars and being the
Right.
NBA university. They said like I have some friends that are a little skeptical and worried about how he referred to like, which was one of the best quotes I've ever heard, where he said he's not doing these. He's going to make sure these recruits know that they're not doing these jerseys a favor by letting them clothe them, which I thought
Yeah.
was an amazing quote. But
Yeah.
how he referred to that and said like these players are going to know what it means to wear that jersey. They're worried that like he's going to recruit like 3-star, 4 stars that will like be appreciative instead of like recruiting the best of best talent, and worried that will become Indiana is what their worry
Well, I
is.
mean, look, the part of the problem is when you get rid of your coach or your coach leaves, in the coach in Calipari's case, you always risk becoming an Indiana or a team that had tradition and character and still has character certainly, but and still has tradition certainly, but they've fallen on rough times, and we easily, I believe, could have become that. I don't believe we will now because of Pope. But it's interesting to me that your friends say that, Cameron, because that was my point to everyone when Cal was recruiting 5 stars and would get 5 5 stars or 6 5 stars or however many, and that's the repercussions of these guys going to the NBA a year early or being ones and dones. That's not Cal's fault. That's not, Cal can sit and revel in the fact that he's put so many guys in the pros, and he should, but it's not Cal's fault that we became NBA university or a farm team for the NBA or whatever people call us. The reality is you either go out and recruit 5 stars, which Pope will certainly try to do. Because why wouldn't you go out and try to, you'll recruit the best players you can get for your team. That's all Cal did. That's all Pope will do. I think the only difference is that the difference is Pope specifically said this. Now, again, I think Cal said this as well, and I think Cal did a great job with this. You recruit players that are best for your team or your program. So, if that means that Mark will go out and get a 4-star at a certain position because he thinks, okay, his game style fits what I'm going to ask of him better, maybe he will. But the reality is that if people want kids to stick around for longer than a year, and so they can get to know them better, or in the case of what would benefit Kentucky basketball, is that's when you get better between your freshman and sophomore year. You're going to get a lot better that summer. And so who you start as a freshman, there's a big leap for most of these guys in their sophomore year. So if you want guys to stick around longer, then you have to recruit guys that are not that good. So it's a give and take. I mean, I was perfectly happy with the situation we had with Cal. I'm clearly more excited now about the situation we have with Mark because I didn't think this would happen. But it's going to be one of those things where he will go out and get the 5 stars. And the fun thing is the combination of Cal's charisma and Kentucky's tradition, the combination of now Pope's charisma and Kentucky tradition, it's going to attract a lot of talent to us. And that talent may be good enough to be ones and dones. And Mark didn't leave that out of his press conference either. He mentioned that, hey, we'll have some ones and dones. And I think UK fans ought to look at that as an exciting thing because that means that your friends know, yeah, we're getting 5-star talent and really good talent who are playing well enough to go to the NBA after 1 year. But I do think there will be some of those kids that Mark gets more because they're good for our system and what he's going to run, that maybe they'll be here, 1, 2, 3, or 4 years. But you got to remember at this point, the way the NBA is set up, the longer a kid is here to some degree, it just means not the worst they're playing, but they're not quite great basketball talent. They're not as great basketball talent. I think that's what's fair. But then as my dad reminded me the other day, it's like a lot of these guys came in 5 stars. Well, there's certain players on this team that I'd say maybe didn't have a 5-star freshman year. And there are a lot of kids you can recruit as a 3-star that will become 5-star caliber college basketball players, whether that takes 1 year or whether that takes 4 years.
So speaking of someone that definitely fits the system well, as we're recording this, there's 1 player left in this recruiting class. The other 5 have decommitted or whatever. But Travis Perry at the press conference got that standing ovation and it got an extremely loud cheer, at least from where I was watching it at home.
Yeah, no, he did.
What do you like? I think that it obviously ended all of the speculation of maybe that he could enter the portal or something. But
yeah, I don't think Travis was coming to. I think he's one of those classic stories of, maybe kind of like Reed, where Travis, if he got an offer from Kentucky, he was coming to Kentucky. And I don't think it had mattered who the coach was. Now, I definitely think if the coach was, I definitely think we could have hired a certain coach that maybe Travis would have said, yeah, this isn't Cal. This isn't what I signed up for. But I don't think that's who Mark is. And I think Mark is able to, again, if as we saw the other day again at the press conferences, Mark is able to quickly, and I know he'd already talking to Travis, but Mark had already quickly, I think, endeared himself enough to Travis so that Travis probably feels, I would guess again, and I'm biased, but I would think feels better about coming to Kentucky than he did before, because I don't think there's any doubt now that from what Mark said that Kentucky, this is about, hanging banners. This is about the name on the front of our chest. This is about, the program, not about, selling kids on, hey, we're going to get you the NBA faster. Mark will still get kids to the NBA fast, but his priority and his focus will be hanging banners for the program.
And we also just received a commitment yesterday out of it. It's one of the most interesting stories I remember from a recruit at Kentucky, at least, because he is Mormon. Colin Chandler out of the class of 22, where he was a top 35 recruit, but he had to go on a 2-year mission trip. And I had heard a whole lot of different stories, but he was only allowed to play half court basketball while on this mission trip, and it was only for an hour a day.
Probably depending on where he was.
Yeah. And so I don't think, and this is another thing where some of my friends are just pessimistic people, and they're just do you think there's any chance that he lost any of his game? I mean, he won Gatorade Player of the Year in Utah his senior year. I don't think the 2-year mission trip
Oh, I see what
necessarily.
you're saying. Yeah, I guess it's possible if he goes on, if all he could play was half court basketball, and again it was a 2-year mission trip, and again you got to figure, okay, where was he on his mission trip? Um, yeah, I think it's possible that he lost some of it, but I also don't think I think I think he's got just as easily a time of regaining it. It may take a little time for him to get back in the swing of being as good as he was out of high school, but I don't think I would doubt highly that the mission trip affected him enough that he's a different kind of basketball player. So I think even maybe even beneficially, he's 2 years older. So, he's entering presumably as a freshman. He's entering as like, I mean, it's a 2-year older man that has had the chance to, whether he's playing half court basketball or not, he is getting bigger and stronger. And that's, to a large degree, I think one of the things we do miss when they're not allowed to make that jump at Kentucky from freshman to sophomore year.
And I think it's interesting too, as you mentioned, like he's older. He's already 21 years old going
Yeah,
into
that's usually about the
his
time
freshman
you're
year.
a senior. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that'll definitely be interesting, just on how he'll like grow. But and like I don't know how like true it is, but I heard some people say that he gets back in July, which will obviously be a little close to the season. But if he's here multiple years, he's obviously going to get
Well, and
everything
yeah,
back.
and I mean, you would presume he'd be here multiple years, but maybe he won't. Maybe he'll have a Reed Shepherd kind of year and he'll go early. Yeah, I think usually whether he gets here in July or not, it's close to the season, but he's really only missed like 1 month. I mean, because the guys um in the summer, they usually, and I don't know how Mark will do it. Mark may do it differently, but they usually the head coach wants them there. They take summer classes all summer, and so they're playing pickup games, lifting weights, doing conditioning, all that stuff's going on in summer. So, and that usually happens in June, beginning maybe mid-June. So if he's here in July, then he's missed 2 weeks. And again, as good as he evidently was, knowing Mark's penchant for just work ethic and making sure his team is in shape, I think he'll get up to speed quickly.
So while we're on like the recruiting aspect, what do you think? I think obviously to me, like great shooters, I feel like it would be obvious to play like in this system. Like if you were a recruit, like what do you think the pull is to Kentucky? Because with Cal, it was like a one and done type thing. You can go to the
Right.
league. What do you think the pull is like for Coach Pope at Kentucky?
I think number one, I think the pull is for, again, just who he is and his personality. I mean, he will go sell himself because you have to. Because look, most kids come to play at colleges for the coach. They don't, most don't come to college to play at the college. They play to come for the coach. And so I think Mark will be the same. And the pull for Kentucky is that we've got, the charisma and the personality that brought kids to BYU, the same charisma and personality that's going to bring kids now to Kentucky. But now you got to add the excitement, the tradition, and the name of a blue blood like Kentucky. So you got, and I mean, I've already heard stories of players that Mark had contacted or wanted to contact while he was at BYU who they wouldn't even pick up the phone. They wouldn't talk to him because he was BYU's coach. He becomes Kentucky's coach. Now all of a sudden they're calling him. And again, I mean, so I think you add the tradition of Kentucky, you add Mark's charisma, and I think that's the pull. The pull is, to some degree, the same thing that was Calipari's pull: Cal's charisma and the tradition of Kentucky basketball, and then 20,000 people at a press conference. I mean, like Mark said in the press conference, this is going to every recruit in the country because he's going out and going to try to put together the best team next year.
Yeah, I love that he said that, and then also where he said, like people start to pick up the phone a little differently when you're at Kentucky
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
So we mentioned it early on about the like kind of like missed hirings. Do you know anything like behind the scenes that like went on with Scott Drew? Or I mean, like Scott Drew, he had released a statement that said like he just prayed on it and
Yeah,
he believed that his
I
team's
believe
called back to Waco.
I believe that. I believe he did. I'm thankful he did, and thankfully he chose to stay at Baylor, just because of what's happened. But no, I don't know any of the real stuff. I mean, all the stuff I was getting because I was intentionally trying to stay off social media as much as possible. I still am, and so I would get like nuggets from, it really was my text messages that would fill up with all the rumors and all the this, that, and the other, and screenshots of the social media that I was trying to stay off of. But I found out the storyline of me finding stuff out happened the same with everyone else. I mean, I had nothing, no knowledge of what happened behind the scenes with any of the coaches. I kept hearing the same thing as everything else. All I know is that Thursday night, I start to hear Mark's name come up, and Friday morning, he's practically our head coach. And even that, I didn't find out until everyone else found out.
So, like in a nutshell, this is, I think, like a lot of people initially that night, people were worried or whatever. And people had started to like figure out that he coaches a very interesting like offense, and luckily I've been
He
like
basically
blessed
runs
to.
Golden State's offense.
That's what I'd heard that, and like the zoom action, like people have, like obviously I think Jimmy Dykes is the one that has kind of like made people familiar with like a floppy action, zoom action, different stuff. But
Yeah.
like the way that he runs like zoom action, it's like you said, Golden State, where there's a million different options out of it, and it's not extremely textbook. So it's insanely hard to guard. And you can hear Kelvin Sampson talk about it, where they're different from every team in the country in the aspect of like how they shoot the ball and the cuts that they make and how they're continuously moving.
Yeah.
So do you think that will like translate well, even though it'll be like obviously there'll be some different type of players that'll come.
Yeah.
That like, I'm not sure if.
Well, again, I think you got to look at the fact that Mark's going to get the best kids he can, which again, because of Kentucky and because of him, that'll be some great kids. But I think he'll intentionally target the ones that he knows work well within the system that he's developed. And I think a lot of what he does, I mean, it's an innovative offense. But the funny thing is, it's 30 years old. I mean, Mark runs the same offense with the exception of the full court pressing. He runs the same offense. I mean, a lot of the same stuff that we ran back in the 90s. And it was just kind of, he got it from Coach Pitino. Now there's definitely some new stuff he runs, but it's a lot of just the same kind of speed at which his teams play. The fact that they shoot so many threes, the fact that they will run so many different defenses at you. That sort of thing. And then what they do on offense, and it's a lot of, some of it's new, but a lot of it's Mark learned 30 years ago. So it's really not innovative as much maybe making the cycle.
And how you mentioned it's like not like a new thing. I'd seen a YouTube video I watched on like just the history of like zoom action, and it had actually been like ran by I think they had found like Red Auerbach. Like they had that like principle of it. Obviously, it's changed an insane amount over the years, but there's the history of it. It was interesting to see like how it's been ran and changed over the years.
Yeah.
So I think that'll just be like a super interesting thing, as well as like I love John Calipari with everything. Like he was my childhood.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be interesting to have X's and O's and not like just a dribble drive, beat your man.
Yeah.
I think it'll be awesome to have like that change in Kentucky. I think that'll be
it'll
awesome.
Be different. I think the culture will be different. A lot of stuff will be different. I think a lot of it is what UK fans have been asking for the last 3 years specifically. But things were, they didn't think Calipari took seriously enough. And again, and it's always perception. I think they're going to get a lot of that stuff that they've been asking for now, because that's just again who Mark is.
And I think some people in his press conference, he mentioned changing up defenses, all this different stuff. And then in the first Mark Pope radio show with Tom Leach, he had mentioned that like analytically switching up defenses causes more turnovers, and they like look at the numbers and all this.
Yeah.
And it just felt like a new like change. It's not that Cal like didn't care to look into that. He just was it was just man to man, maybe a 2-3 like once a game. But like I think it'll be interesting to see all these different defenses as well as the like innovative offense.
It'll be a different style. I think the one thing people need to understand is, number one, you got to have the personnel to play whatever it is you're going to play. And number two, I think Cal was into analytics. I mean, they were into looking, following stuff and scouting stuff. But I think what Pope's bringing to the table is, Cal had his set ways of playing offense and defense, which he would, no pun intended, tweak every year depending on his personnel. But Mark's throwing everything at you. I mean, now the problem is going to be kind of like we had the problem when we played of, you don't learn everything the first 2 months of practice. I mean, you're learning all 5 months of the year. So like you put in stuff early in the year and you're not running it really well, and you get better as the year goes on, because eventually you're going to get down here to, you've been practicing 5 months, without having to think where you need to be. If the ball's here, the ball's here, the ball's here, the ball's here. And then you're going to have to do that for several different defenses, several different offenses. And I think that's what, it'll throw some teams off. It'll definitely get some more turnovers, I think. And I think it'll be overall a better, a more dynamic defense. But it's the difference between, how much can you teach these kids in 5 months? And I think that, again, is where Mark shines, is that he doesn't just have an innovative offense. He's an innovative coach. I mean, he is constantly looking at, what's the quickest way we can get, in every way, whether it's technology, whether it's different styles of dealing with different players, different ways, whatever it is, Mark's going to adapt to make sure that, this is how you coach college basketball right now.
So we've talked about how you all like played together. Well, we'll talk about you a little bit. So obviously, for those of you that are watching that don't know, this is where I got my name from. My dad was obviously a huge fan. Like, you played for his favorite team, and it was just his favorite era of Kentucky basketball already. So what is we've talked before in person about it, and just for the people watching, what is your favorite Kentucky memory?
Um, there's many. I've kind of got them divided into, I think, years and seasons and teammates. But I think overall, like personally, well, on the court, everyone kind of thinks, my 3 against Duke, my 2 threes against Utah. And in reality, it's, on the court, it's the 97 tournament run, which ended in a runner-up. But for me personally, it was like my best basketball I ever played. And then I think, personally, that, basketball wise, it's probably my 97 tournament run. Personally though, to teammates, and that's most of the stuff. So that's like, story after story after story, that you can share. And it's those memories that matter most. So, I mean, and there's 1,000 of them. I mean, you heard Mark share some at the press conference, and we heard in the back of the bus, Shep was sharing some. And that's really what happens when all of us get together. We're all sharing these memories that we have that were not funny at the time when they happened. They were, Shep, in that interview with TD and I did, he talked about the sledding incident. That was not funny at the time at all. I mean, it was so serious, and Coach Pitino was so upset. And now, 30 years later, it's the most hysterical thing in the world, how stupid they were and what they were doing, and that Mark would make up this just ridiculous lie to tell the media that was so outlandish they all knew he was joking. And just memories like that, of that, honestly, you don't even remember until you're with those guys, and then all of a sudden they remember one, and then that makes you remember another one. And that's what, like, I think all of us enjoy about getting together when we do for our reunions, or even getting together the way we did the other day at the press conference.
So you referred to the 97 tournament run. I was not alive at the time. Is it the Derek Anderson thing? Like, he didn't
Yeah.
play in the championship game against Arizona. So
Didn't,
what was
didn't play in the entire tournament except for,
didn't play the entire tournament?
he got in. I think he got in for a total of 0 seconds. He shot 2 free throws. They were technical fouls. But yeah, that's all he played the entire, really, from February, maybe late January. He didn't play the rest of the season.
So it was an injury, though?
So he tore his, I want to say in, I think we were playing Auburn at home, or maybe Ole Miss at home, or somebody. But we were playing, and Derek, tore his ACL. And I was literally watching it happen on TV, because I was recovering from a concussion. So I've been out for 2 weeks, and all of a sudden, Derek's down, and then I'm coming back, and then I'm playing really, really well. But Derek's spending that whole time having surgery, doing rehab. I mean, it was like one of the fastest turnarounds of anyone, like getting their brand new ACL healthy and strong. And by the time we got to the tournament, he was practicing hard with us. Like, he was going full bore. And I do believe he could have easily played. But he didn't. Again, it came up on the back of the bus. Coach Pitino was more worried about Derek not being completely ready, because even when you feel strong, man, it's different when you go out there on the court. So I think Coach P was worried about him not being particularly ready or strong enough, or if he tore his other ACL or that ACL again, that's his professional career. So we kept him out to protect his professional career, which Derek had want to say an 8 or 9 year professional career and did really well.
So I'm sure for you, it's been super cool to see like Patino come back around like fully. I mean, he had the video Friday that he posted about Martin
Yeah.
Pope. Like what is it? What did it feel like whenever he like took the Louisville job initially? And like,
It honestly was to me, it was kind of exciting because it meant, knowing the great coach he was, knowing the great coach we had in Coach Cal, I just thought, man, this is going to make this rivalry explode. I mean, we complain all the time as UK fans that ESPN spends too much time promoting the Duke North Carolina rivalry, and we've got the better rivalry. Well, we haven't in the last couple of years. It hadn't been much of a game. And there were times before that where it wasn't. But when Patino was here, it was like I mean, that rivalry was absolutely amazing. I mean, so I didn't mind at all him taking the job at Louisville. He did exactly what I thought he would do as far as like building up. Those games became crazy games, and and so watched. And then he did what I thought he would do as far as Final Four and national championship, and there's some people say he came to Louisville as opposed to going to Michigan because just to stick it in Kentucky's eye. I'm not sure he didn't leave here under bad circumstances. He left here pretty well, doing us right, and I think him doing right by us, going to the Celtics for 70 million, and we got 3 national championship games and 2 national championships out of him to some degree. Certainly the third one, or the eighth one overall. Or I'm sorry, the seventh one. Talking about Tubby's, that Tubby, with a lot of people say he did it with Patino's talent. Well, he basically did it with everyone that Patino had recruited, but he did something that was hard to do. So I think Patino going to Louisville had nothing to do with anything other than that he thought that was where he could win best. And then again, it just upped the rivalry, made it more fun.
I was really hoping he would end up being on that bus on Sunday as well.
Well, I was happy with the conversation. Went back and back and forth on social media, obviously, of him. Mark calling him out on the press conference saying we want to play St. John's, and coach saying, yeah, you know what, it's down, we'll do it publicly as well. That in and of itself, and hearing the cheers at Rupp Arena for when Coach Pitino's name came up, that was like a big positive for me.
Yeah, I think for my generation of people, like whenever I was growing up, until he left Louisville, I was like, I hated that guy because like I mean, even though like Dad told me about like the past, like what he did for
Right.
Kentucky, getting us out of what we had with Eddie Sutton.
Right.
But once he had left Louisville, I began to appreciate it, and the more I grow, the more like I love the guy. And I think I could listen to Rick Pitino talk all day as well.
Yeah, he's like that. And the funny thing is, and I think that's where Pope gets a lot of it too. The Pope was always a great talker because he's very intellectual. But yeah, it's the same. Like the motivation things you hear from Pitino are similar to the things you hear from Billy Donovan. Came from the same tree. Similar things you're going to hear from Mark Pope came from the same tree. The same tree. So you're going to hear a lot of the same stuff. The things that you like, Pitino talking and the things he says, and he is incredibly thoughtful and motivational. Pope's going to be the exact same way.
So one last question. I'm sure you've been asked this like a million times with like every interview that you've done. And a lot of people, I feel like, overreacted to it whenever he hinted at it kind of in the press conference. You think there's any chance Reed Sheppard returns, or do you have?
I don't. I don't think there's any reason he should. And I think now, let me be clear. I think some people think because I know the Shepherds that I know what's going on. I don't. I've intentionally not asked Jeff, what's Reed thinking? What's Reed going to do? I haven't really wanted that information. I've wanted that information, of course, but I haven't wanted, Jeff's got to be answering that question 1,000 times a day. I just think personally, from the people I've talked to, some of which are like NBA scouts, he needs to go. He just needs to go. I mean, I kind of thought for a minute that maybe Pope being here might keep him around for a second year, but look, the reality is, regardless of who the head coach of Kentucky is, when you had the year that Reed had and you're being told you're going to go top 10, some people are saying top 5. A couple of places have said number 1 overall. As important as that is, that leads you to talking to GMs of NBA teams, and that's what the Shepherds are doing now. So if Reed decides to go, it's because he's being told by people who know you're going to go high, or we're going to take you at this spot if you're available, or this, that, and the other. I think a lot of people, and I would put myself in here. I didn't expect Reed to be here 1 year and then have gone to the NBA. So he had a year that surprised a lot of people, even though we knew he was good. I mean, we didn't know he was going to make the leap from high school to college in such an amazing way, and then possibly make the leap from college to NBA within a year. And if you can do that, and you're somewhat guaranteed, though nothing's a guarantee, that you're going to be drafted highly, not you have to go, because number one, this is a down draft year. Number two, you're not guaranteed to have the kind of year you had last year this year. And I'm not even just talking about injuries. I mean, a lot of things can happen. So you're high, your name cannot be hotter right now. You're freshman of the year, you got to go. Again, Willie, I don't know. I tend to think he will, just because it makes sense in my head.
That's where I'm at too. It feels like it would be insane to look top 10 in the eye, which
Yeah.
like the lowest I think I've seen him is like 9. And I think it
Yeah.
would be insane to look that in the eye and turn it down.
And I think getting drafted 9 is like 3 million a year for 4 years, or I mean, it's some ridiculous amount of money, and that's just your first contract if you get to a second one. Plus, everyone's forgetting that if he's drafted that high, there's going to be a shoe deal, presumably.
Yeah.
And then he goes on. Maybe he goes on to be a top 15 NBA player. Who knows? But right now, you got to take advantage of everything that's being offered to you. And so here's a perfect situation of, no one thought Reed Shepherd would be one and done. Well, he might be. He might easily be one and done. The reality is he deserves us being respectful of his decision, I guess. I would like to see him stick around, just because selfishly I'm a UK fan. I want to see him stick around, but there's a part of me that's like, yeah, but that's he's got to go. I mean, he's got to go. So we'll see what ultimately happens. But yeah, to me, in my head, I can't imagine him staying. I just think, it just makes the most sense him going for his career, his dream, and financially as well.
Now, I don't think anybody will, but I hope that like the fan base doesn't hold it against him, because it feels like it's the best. It's obviously the best thing that he could do for
Yeah, yeah, and
himself.
I think most people will. There have been some conversations I've had with people that they ask the same thing you asked, and I tell them the same thing I said, because this is what I think. And they look at me like they're stunned, they can't believe it, and I'm like, he could stick around because he's a Kentucky boy, and he loves, this is his dad's best friend, is now the head coach. I mean, that could be a reason he sticks around, but why else would he? I mean, there's too much money to be made in NBA, and we can say money's on everything, and that's true. It's not, but it's an awfully important thing. And for him to be able to kind of settle his future by going, now, if that's what they're saying, then I just think you go.
So Cal had mentioned a million times that Reed played more like his mom. Do you think that is
Yeah,
the
yeah,
case, or
no,
do you
that's
think it's
true.
like his dad?
No, it's true. It's his mom. If you go back and there's very little of his mom. There's very little video of his mom playing, plenty of his dad, but not his mom. But yeah, he plays a lot like his mom. Like, he's very, very close to his mother. Looks a lot like her, plays a lot like her. He can jump like his dad. He can shoot like both of them. But as far as his, not to say Jeff wasn't a smart player. Jeff was an incredibly smart player. But Stacy was ahead. I mean, she just was like a basketball savant kind of player, and that's kind of who Reed's turned into being. So, I mean, he just kind of sees his court awareness is ridiculously good.
So I would love to have you back on another time, because like obviously this one is focused on like the
Yeah,
hire that
well,
just like broke the
one
internet. But
particular thing, right? Yeah,
so I would love to have you back on, just talk Kentucky basketball and more of like your time alone. And then obviously I'm named after you, so I want to. And people, I guess people that are tuned in, the first time that we had met, you asked me if I knew what my name meant, and I thought you
right.
were like referring to like what it meant to be named after Cameron Mills. I was like, oh, it
No, that's not
means a
what
lot. But then I was like, oh, crooked nose, which I feel like every Cameron should know that. Um, but
I do
thank
too.
you,
I,
thank you
I
so
think
much
the
for
exact
coming
same
on.
thing. You're welcome, Cameron. I appreciate
Um,
you having me.
I'm excited for the new era. Like I said, I was 6 when Cal got hired, so it's
I think
officially
I
like
think you and your buddies will be pleasantly surprised.
I'm excited for it. I hope that's how it is. So thank you again
All
for
right, man.
coming on and joining.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Take care.
Hope you all enjoyed that interview with my namesake, Cameron Mills, a Kentucky legend. So I was glad to have him on and talk about his former teammate being named the head coach of his favorite school and his alma mater. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed that. Moving on, the NBA playoffs are set. So we'll talk about the West first. The Thunder got the 1 seed. The 2 seed is the Nuggets. And as I'm recording this, I don't know who the 8s will be. But the 7 that the Nuggets will be playing is the Lakers. And then the 3 seed is the Timberwolves. The 4 seed is the Clippers. The 4 seed Clippers will play the 5 seed Dallas Mavericks, and the 3 seed Timberwolves will play the 6 seed Suns. So I think the Western Conference is going to be awesome. You obviously get the rematch of the Western Conference Finals from last year. That would between the Lakers and the Nuggets. You get the young up-and-coming Thunder against the winner of the Kings Pelicans. So I think that'll be a really good series and a good test. And it's no joke that Oklahoma City atmosphere in the playoffs is crazy. But yeah, I mean, you're getting a lot of storylines out here in the Western Conference, so it's gonna be awesome. And there was obviously all the talk of, because for those of y'all that don't know, to get the 7 seed, the winner of the 7 and 8 game, so the 7th seed and the 8th seed play. The winner gets the 7 seed. The loser will play the winner of the 9 and 10 seed for the 8 seed spot. So, I mean, now the Warriors got knocked out. This could be the end of the run. This may be the end of any like Draymond, Steph, and Klay Thompson that we'll ever see. So it's crazy. And it's also pretty poetic that Harrison Barnes hit that dagger towards the end to end their dynasty, really. It's kind of sad because that's kind of also my childhood. Ironic enough that we were just talking about John Calipari, but like those dudes been together since, I mean, the first time I really remember them was like 2014, so I was 12 years old, and this could officially be the end of it. For the East, we have the most dominant team in the league all year. The Celtics is the 1 seed. The Knicks got the 2 seed. The 3 seed is the Bucks. The 4 seed is the Cavs. The Magic are the 5 seed. And the Pacers are the 6 seed. The 2 seed Knicks will be playing the 7 seed 76ers, who knocked off the Heat tonight. And yeah, so Shams just tweeted out Jimmy Butler had a weird fall. Miami Heat star Jimmy Butler is feared to have an MCL injury in his knee. The injury could sideline Butler for an indefinite period. MRI to come. So, prayers for Jimmy. Hopefully that doesn't end up being the case, and hopefully it's something lighter. But I'd hate to think that that might actually be how it is. But the 7 seed 76ers will play the Knicks there. So that'll be a good series. And as of right now, I am watching this play-in game between the Bulls and the Hawks. And the Chicago Bulls are up 91-85 with 4.5 minutes left in the third. So it's been a good game. Been a game of runs this entire time. It looked like the Bulls were just going to beat them by 95, and then the Hawks battled back. So the 8th seed, it will be the winner of this game playing the Miami Heat for the 8th seed to see who plays the Boston Celtics in the first round. So the playoffs are going to be awesome. I'm excited for the first round matchup of the Pacers Bucks, who have already had drama like 3 times this season. So that one's going to be awesome. And then just Knicks Sixers is just going to be, it feels like historic, so it feels awesome there. But yeah, I mean, other than that, like these playoffs are as good as you can imagine, just storyline wise, and then just teams wise. Keeping it NBA, the Team USA basketball roster was announced. So the 2024 Team USA is Bam Adebayo, Drew Holiday, Tyrese Halliburton, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, LeBron James, Joel Embiid, Jason Tatum, Kawhi Leonard, Anthony Edwards, and Devin Booker. I know like old heads might try to kill me for this. I don't think there's a team that could beat that team ever. That team is ridiculous. That is the greatest team I've ever heard of. To think that the weakest guy on that roster is probably Drew Holiday is insane. That team's ridiculous. So it's basically a battle for second place when it comes to the Olympics. Because that team ain't losing. They're not going to be losing any games. To end this here, well, I also need to talk about the Batcats a little bit because I'll be going to the game Friday. But before I get to that, Scottie Scheffler wins the Masters. It's his second ever, which shockingly enough, it's only his second major ever, and he's won it twice. I think he's one of like 4 or 5 guys to win the Masters twice. Tiger got last. So once he made the cut, he got last for the first time ever. I think he was like plus 16. So it was his worst score ever, and he got last. So, I mean, it's sad, but I think I could watch Tiger golf all day. And I love Tiger Woods to death. I think it's pronounced Ludwig, maybe Ludwig. Ludwig Oberg. I'm pretty sure it's how it's pronounced. That could be butchering that. I think that is how it's said. That dude's up next. He got second in the Masters. 24 years old. That was his major debut. And he battled back and fought that whole time. Got second place by, I think, 4 strokes. So it was crazy. He's definitely up next. And he could be the guy that, like, people think will be filling the shoes of Tiger. But maybe it's Scottie Scheffler that can fill the role of, like, dominance. Bryson DeChambeau, most interesting man in golf. It was awesome to see how well he played. Max Homa, it was amazing to see him play the way that he has because it's been a thing. He does not play well in majors, but he definitely did. He certainly did in the Masters. I think he finished 3rd or 4th in the end. But Bryson DeChambeau, he was battling the whole time. It was awesome to see him because he didn't even make the cut last year. So that was cool to see out of Bryson. For college baseball, one thing, the SEC is still continuing to dominate. That's no surprise when it comes to college baseball. But the Batcats, my Kentucky Wildcats, were ranked 3rd in the country right now. Just beat Louisville last night, 17-13. The Bats were hot. So yeah, I'm going this Friday to the opening game of the series versus Tennessee, who's ranked 4th in the country. So it's going to be awesome. I think number 2 right now is Arkansas. Number 1 is Texas A&M. But we're 14-1 in conference. I think we're 31-5 overall. It's unreal. This is the greatest baseball team that I've ever seen. And if we go to Omaha, you can bet that I will be there. So it's been a fun ride so far. And I mean, we'll see how it goes this weekend versus Tennessee. Big opportunity this weekend to prove ourselves. We've swept like 3 series in a row. So if you haven't been paying attention to the Batcats, that's America's team, and jump on board. They're super fun. So I guess that'll just about do it for this episode. It'll be a long episode, including the interview. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in to yet again another episode of The Jump. Have a great rest of the week. Enjoy the playoffs. And if you're a hockey fan, enjoy the NHL playoffs. Follow the socials. They'll be in the end of this video. But The Jump Sports on TikTok, The Jump Sports _ on Instagram. Go follow those. I post quite a bit over there. But yeah, thank you for tuning in to another podcast. Have a great rest of the week. Enjoy the sports coming up, and peace.